like to look in familiar psalm tonight. Psalm 46. Most of you will probably recognize that. I'm going to read the first verse and the verse 10. Psalm 46, verse 1 and verse 10. Verse 1 says, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Verse 10 says, be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted on the earth. Last week, when Brother John asked me to preach tonight, my first thought came to something that happened about a week ago. And I was getting kind of stressed, and I came Wednesday night, and Brother John asked me how my week had gone, and I said, well, it's been worse. On day 4, so that would have been day 3, this was day 4 on Thursday, and it had just been an interesting week, and there's not a lot to go into. There's just so many things have been happening, and it was kind of a crazy few days, and I remember thinking, this is crazy. These things just kept going through my head, and I wasn't getting anywhere. Just kept seeming to be spinning my wheels, so to speak, and finally I thought, I just need to stop. So I went into the living room and I did just that. I just sat down for a minute and I began to think about what it was, because you can look at there were several things just coming at me at once, and I sat down and just began thinking about it. And as I pondered it and thought about it and just was kind of working through it, praying as I went, I realized that things were just stuff that the world throws on you. There's been a lot thrown on us in the last few months, so much on the media and so much of everything bombarding us. I had no real control over what was going on, and it was time just to be still. And I thought, I just sat there for a while, and I just let the quietness around me and my thoughts just kind of dissolve some of these things. And I thought, sometimes that's all it is just to be still. I thought about that as I read the rest of this chapter. If you read this chapter, most of us have, there's a lot in it, and I'm going to read it. I want to read the entire chapter quickly here. It says that starts with, God is our refuge and strength and a very present help in trouble. Therefore will not we fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea. That word though, I thought, though everything else is going on around us, though everything seems out of control, though we have everything being thrown at us through the media, through our own workplaces, through everything that's been going on, it says that in the next verse, it says, though the waters thereof roll and be troubled, though the mountains shake with the swelling thereof, continues, there is a river, the streams whereof shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacles of the Most High. When you stop and think about all of that, but what we have to look forward to, there's a quiet place. The psalmist also in chapter 23 talks about God leading us. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. And I thought of that as we think about heaven and the waters there and the tabernacle and the city of God. When you think of all those things, everything down here kind of takes a back seat as you're looking at it. Verse 5 says, God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God will help her, and that right early. It's talking about the earth there. The heathen raged, the kingdoms were moved. He uttered his voice. I was looking in the commentary, it says uttered his voice, and it says it's like his voice thundered. His voice just thundered. It's enough. It says, and the earth melted. It was enough. Stop. It just melted away. As you see something, sometimes you watch it just melt away, and those troubles just begin to melt away, and you're in that still place. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Verse 8, come, behold the works of the Lord, what desolations he hath made in the earth. We don't see what God sees. We see it in our own eyes. We hear things. We have a very small portion, Noah's very small portion of what our God actually sees. Come behold, verse 9, he maketh wars to cease unto the end of the earth. He breaketh the bow and cutteth the spear asunder. He burneth the chariot in the fire. As I was thinking of all that, what he's doing there, then the verse 10 says, be still. Amen. And know that I am God. Amen. And even through all of this, he's still being exalted. God will be exalted. He says, I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. And you look around today and you see all the turmoil going on, and you can't help but see part of it. Even if you don't listen to the news, you know something is going on out there. There's just this spirit. There's just this weight that sometimes you just seem to carry. And there's times I don't even want to hear what's going on out there. It's just, it's awful what's going on out there now. And as Brother John said, trying to take away our history you learn from your history. You learn from the mistakes of the past, and that's the way to go on, not to take away the history, because you're going to repeat exactly what he just said. It's going to repeat. I thought this is such a comforting words in this psalm, and we read that at times, to be comforted. That first sentence, that he's a refuge and a strength, and he's present. The word present stuck out at me too. Present. He's now. Amen. He's not. He was with us in the past. He was with us. He'll be with us in the future. But he's here now. Amen. When we need him, when you call upon him. When Amen. Loved Sister Jessica's testimony about her dad, that was present. Yeah. There was something that needed to be taken care of then. Brother Ellen tonight with his loss of a wallet, that's a scary thing, and it's happened to me when my purse was stolen last year. That's scary. Everything in there that what's in there, and mine was never found, but I'm glad yours was. But God knew that. God was there to help. Presence of mind was also there to know what to do and call the right people and to do the right thing and everything. But God was present. Things happen, situations at home. And like I said, we're so bombarded with so many things. We're busy. And have you ever been in a place where the noise or the activity going on was so loud and so thunderous that you couldn't hear yourself think? You couldn't get your thoughts together. You couldn't maybe hear the person standing right next to you talking to you. And sometimes in the world that we're in right now, that's how I feel. I feel like I can't hear everything. I can't hear God. And I was thinking about that, many of you know we have a foster daughter, and she's got to have music going. She has to have the TV on. She has to have something, friends to be with. She's constant, or she's asleep. She has to have all these things going on. She can't just sit still. She's unable to do that at any time. She has to be on her phone. She has to be doing whatever. And I thought, it's those still times that God speaks to us. It's those times when we're quiet that God can speak to us. When you're standing in that noise and that crowd, and it's so loud that you can't hear yourself think, how can you hear God? When you're in that all that bombardment coming at us now with all these things going on, you just want to say stop. Because you need to hear God's voice. You need to hear God say, it's going to be okay. I'm here. I'm present. I'm your refuge. I'm your strength. I'm your present help in times of trouble. I'm here. Just know that I'm here. I am God, and I know what's going on. And I wonder sometimes, I've mentioned, with her, what is it going to take for God to reach her? She never leaves an opening. Very seldom does she leave an opening, I should say. Sometimes I get a word in edgewise, but, that's what the devil does. He gets us so busy. He takes our mind and just spins it and rolls it around wherever he wants to and tries to get us confused. And sometimes when you hear all these things on the news, you get confused. It's confusing. So sometimes I think we just need to be still. And that morning when I just sat down and I just made myself stop, because your mind just starts racing after a while, and that's what was going on that morning. My mind was just racing with all these thoughts and all these things that I had to do and all the things that were going on. And the Lord helped. The Lord quieted me and said, it's going to be okay. Just take one thing at a time. Don't just turn off that TV, turn off the radio. Don't look at the news for a while. I'm here, and this is part of my plan. We don't understand God's plan. We don't understand what's happening other than the fact that we know it's God's plan and we know where this is going. We know what's going to happen. We have that hope of heaven. But we can get so crowded out that we can't hear God's voice. And I want that to be my prayer. I want that to be my thing that I think of so often, that, as I start to get busy and things start to happen, that I want to hear God's voice. I don't want to be so busy I can't hear God's voice. Sometimes you just need to stop. I thought of a couple of other times when the Bible was talking about being still, and of course we're all familiar in Mark 4:38-40, when Jesus was asleep in the ship and he stood up and he said, "Peace, be still," and he stilled everything. Can you imagine being in that storm on a boat and everything is suddenly quiet? And he stilled it just like that. It just stopped. And I heard someone the other day say, what about all those people who were out there in that boat? Any other boats that were out there? And that storm just stopped. I wonder what they thought. There was anybody else out there. Peace, be still. God whispers peace. 1 Kings, I was thinking about the story of Elijah when he was hiding in the cave, and God told him, he said, "Go forth and stand up on the mount before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great strong wind rent the mountains, and he brake in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice." Amen. It was a quiet voice. And that's what God does to us, doesn't he? He just quiets us if we'll let him. But sometimes we're so busy. We're so out of, not that we haven't been talking to God, but sometimes, we just get all those thoughts going. And I know sometimes, I told Bob the other night, I don't know what's wrong with my brain. It just seems like it just goes and goes and goes, and I can't make it stop. And that was that fourth day where I just went and sat down and said, "Lord, you've got to help me here." And I just stopped thinking about those things. So my thought tonight is, be still. Amen. It's in the silence, it's in the stillness that we hear God's voice. Amen. It's in that silence and that stillness that we're quiet enough to hear what God has to say to us. Amen. To take out those thoughts that we need to turn loose of, to realize that he's in control, and to realize that though this world seems to be spinning out of control, we can be in the center of his will. We're not going to be in that spinning part. We're going to be in the center of his will. We're going to be in the center of that world as it goes along. And when you're in the center of that, you're not going to be spinning as fast because you're not going to be thrown off. Okay? And God is here to still us tonight. He's here to calm whatever might be going on in your life. I don't know. I see what's going on in mine, and I know that God can be there to still. So tonight, just be still, because he says, "I am God."